Hi everyone, good evening and shalom. Being here tonight is a real honor. Thank you Jeremy Ben-Ami, President of J Street, Mort Halperin and the J Street Board, J Street Leadership and J Street U. My friends, being at the J Street National Conference feels like home. And not just because this is not my first time here. It feels like home because the things that I care about and the people that I fight alongside with are always present in this room. I'm talking, for example, about the brave women of the wall, who are not just fighting for their rights, but also teach Israelis like me about the many wonderful faces of Judaism, the richness of which goes way beyond what our school books and religious parties ever presented. I'm talking about the inspiring students of J Street U. Let's hear you again. You guys promote accountability and transparency in your own communities, so the Jewish donors from Cincinnati or Boston can now tell whether the money is used for settlement activities. I'm talking about the many friends from the New Israel Fund. Who stand these very days against the most ridiculous, nevertheless dangerous incitement from no other but the Prime Minister of Israel, just because they support those in the front line of the battle against the deportation of thousands of people seeking asylum from Sudan and Eritrea. Friends in the NIF, you are truly the guardians of Israeli democracy, social justice, equality, and human rights. I see here also veterans from the peace movement and young anti-occupation activists. I see civil rights professionals, Jewish feminists. I see Jewish LGBT activists. I see my friends, my people. Dear friends, coming to the US and especially to this conference at this time feels like home in another not so very pleasant way. In both our countries, we see these days the same contempt for civil rights, xenophobia, racism and chauvinism, and politics of fear, all starting at the highest level of government. There is a clear alliance between the right-wing camps in Israel and in the US. They sponsor and legitimize each other, both pardoning and even embracing American and European anti-Semites and extreme right-wing populists. It's an alliance that has had and continues to have ever more dangerous consequences for both our countries. These days, it seems Israeli Prime Minister and the American administration are joining forces in trying to destroy the Iran deal, against the repeated warnings of many among both the American and the Israeli military leadership. 15 years ago, it was the then Meretz leader, Yossi Sarid, who stood alone in saying that the war in Iraq will be bad for Israel. Today, as the new leader of Meretz, I come here with a clear message. Abandoning the Iran deal would move us closer to a nuclear Iran instead of further away, which would pose a grave danger to the state of Israel, the region, and the world. In the same time, we cannot accept military presence of Iran, the only country in the world that threatens to destroy Israel on our northern border. Every Israeli, like any man and woman around the world, is horrified that the Assad regime uses chemical weapons against its own civilians just a short 100 kilometers north of Kiryat Shmona. Last night, we saw a clear message that the United States, the United Kingdom, and France cannot accept that either. Dear friends, I grew up with a feeling that peace is just around the corner. It was in the 90s. Only to find out that now it feels further away than ever. I grew up thinking that the struggle for civil rights belongs to the past, only to find out that the notion that all men and women are created equal is just the first step in the journey to equality. I grew up as a young girl, knowing that when I grow up, I could be and do whatever I choose, only to find out that some people, be they rabbis or politicians, still think they can decide for me. I thought about that yesterday as I was walking down the halls of the wonderful National Museum of African American History and Culture. After slavery, liberty was not fully achieved. The brave men and women fighting for their rights tackled segregation. Then came the civil rights movement, and then Black Lives Matter. In short, we find out that history isn't always a straight line. Sometimes it has curves, sometimes even U-turns. The arc of a moral universe is long, taught us Martin Luther King, murdered 50 years ago this month, but it bends towards justice. Dear friends, there is a battle between the ideas of democracy, civil rights, and liberalism versus a new form of authoritarian thinking fueled by populist anger. All over the world, the idea of a liberal democracy is under challenge, sometimes under attack. It's a struggle that takes place in Tel Aviv and in Charlottesville, in Washington, D.C., and in the West Bank, and none of us can win it on our own. Every year we meet, whether here at the J Street Conference or in Israel, in one of the J Street missions, and we talk about our mutual support and help for one another. Today, we are not just supporting each other. Today, we are standing together. Today, we are in an unprecedented political moment when the very things we need to change about Israel have become the same ones you resist and fight for here in the US. Today, it's clear that the battle against occupation and the battle for racial equality are the same fight. Today, it's clear that the fight against forced deportation in the US and in Tel Aviv is the same fight. Today, it's clear that the equality for people of color in America and for Palestinian citizens and Mizrahi Jews in Israel derives from the same principles. Today, it's clear that we have a shared interest in a healthy, sustainable environment and natural resources, and also in maintaining our social media democratic and our privacy protected. The fight for democracy in Washington and in Jerusalem is the same fight. Netanyahu and Trump, they both try to call us unpatriotic. Here is what they are missing. True patriotism is not in their hands, but true patriotism is here, in this room, tonight. When the alt-right embraces Israel, that is a badge of shame, not a badge of honor. Dear friends, the fight for peace and against occupation is true patriotism. Feminism is the true love of Israel. This is the true Ahavat Israel. Civil rights is the true love of people, is the true Ahavat Adam, like we say in Hebrew. Friends, in the past 15 years, Israeli progressives were told and again that if we just move a little bit to the right, we can return to power. And when that didn't work, perhaps a little bit more. I know this is the same case with progressive politics here as well. And although we suffer defeat after defeat, some of our friends in the opposition still think this is the right way even today. They think that the voters moved to the right, and if we want to win them, we have to go right after them. Here is what they are missing. They did not move to the right. They are waiting for our alternative. They are waiting for our leadership with a clear, loud, proud truth, not a pale imitation. We represent not a small and weak minority. We represent a vast majority, both in Israel and in the US. Friends, most Israelis support the two-state solution. Most Israelis support civil marriage and LGBT adoption rights. Most Israelis would like to see just allocation of resources and a strong and effective health, education, and welfare systems. Most Israelis oppose the asylum seekers' deportation and stood together against it. Only last week, following the attack against the New Israel Fund, Israelis donated 1 million shekels to show their support. This is an historic change. There is nothing more patriotic than a joint struggle for our democracies, and this is what we are doing here tonight together. In the last 3 Fridays, Israelis have followed the events around the border with the Gaza Strip, worried that they might deteriorate to another round of violence like we experienced 5 times in the last decade. I visited that southern part of Israel twice in these 3 weeks. Our message is not only to act with restraint and according to the law during the events, but also that it is both our interest and our moral duty to lift the siege over Gaza and to end the occupation on the Palestinian people. This is not just a security or a demographic issue. It's a moral affront to everything we should stand for. It corrupts our institutions and makes our public discourse cynical, violent, and dehumanizing. Dear friends, I stand here tonight representing a broad political camp in Israel. I have no fear, only hope. We are going to be clear on our principles and influential on our politics. We will fight for a center-left coalition that will replace Netanyahu and his extreme government. If Labour or Yesh Atid leaders have a chance to form a decent government, we will support them. Moreover, we would lead the progressive camp in Israel, so it will be possible for them to form such a government. This is a moment in history when we march from the protest in the streets into the halls of power and make our vision into a new reality. I was elected to be the chair of Meretz to do just that. We will be the pillar at the front of the camp. We will pioneer our way from political marginalization to influence and innovation. We will move back to the heart of Israeli politics, because saying the right things isn't enough. We will transform massive support for our values into a mass movement to the polls on election day. This is our job. We deserve, friends, we deserve a government that we can be proud of. We deserve a government that will represent our values. We deserve a government that will end the occupation and promote peace. We deserve a government that will make Israel a true home for every Jew around the world and a true home for every Palestinian citizen. We deserve a government that we can be proud of, and we are the ones that are going to make it happen. Thank you, and have a very successful conference.